Hey guys, Argent here. Sorry it's taken me so long to do a reaction review of this. I could say it was because work was super busy or because I was busy doing stuff for the election, but really I just didn't know what to say about this movie. I mean, given that it's the most esoteric of the Marvel movies, you'd think I'd have a lot to say about it, but it's just very weird. Some might say a little strange. Now that you've all cringed from that pun, I think what it is, and probably the best way to go about talking about it, is Doctor Strange kind of reflects the modern interest in esoteric stuff, theosophy, crystals, magic with a K, rituals, Illuminati, all that stuff. It's extremely like broad, but it's extremely shallow. And this movie is extremely shallow in the concepts it discusses. I mean, it covers a lot of ground, it covers a lot of different ideas, but it doesn't really go into depth on any of them. It's just kind of this weird mixture of different spiritual and mythical concepts thrown together with a gloss of bullshit. And that gives you the movie Doctor Strange. Now, am I saying this is a bad movie? No, I actually really liked the movie. It was a good movie. Just if you're gonna go see it for like kind of an action movie with kind of an interesting premise. Don't go see it expecting to get anything substantive out of it, but still, it was a good movie. I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. I had a lot of fun watching it, but let's kind of try and go into it. I'm not going to do play by play for this one because the plot doesn't make a lot of sense. So basically, for those of you who don't know, and I had watched the Marvel put out like a mini movie a long time ago, Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, which kind of went into his backstory. So I learned a bit about that. So our main character is Doctor Stephen Strange, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who does a good job as he does with pretty much every role he takes on. So Stephen Strange is the latest in a line of like autistic superheroes. He's the world's foremost brain surgeon, and all he really cares about is his work, his reputation, and his ego. He constantly wants to learn more and more about the mind. He wants to do more and more prestigious surgeries. He wants to challenge himself, but he's kind of an asshole. I think it's more due to the fact that he just has no ability to interact with other people than him necessarily even being evil. Somehow he got Rachel McAdams to sleep with him, so obviously he has some social skills. But basically, he's a world famous, extremely wealthy neurosurgeon, and he's texting while driving, or rather, he's looking at a X-ray while driving at high speeds through a mountain pass, and his car crashes, and his hands are completely ruined, and they put a bunch of pins in his hands and try to heal them, and he goes crazy, and because his hands are broken he can't do surgeries anymore. Now if he wasn't like a complete like egomaniac, doctors don't really need their hands, I mean, to be like as supple as possible. I mean, he is still a trained doctor, he's still very knowledgeable, he could become a researcher, he can still lecture. There's no reason he can't continue to learn and be a leader in his field. I mean, Stephen Hawking is the leader of physics, and he can't move. So it wouldn't have to be the end of his career, but he wants immediate fixes. So he spends millions and millions of dollars on increasingly desperate treatments to try to get his hands healed immediately. And he's not willing to go through physiotherapy and try to get his hands to work again normally. To be fair, though, they'll never be as good as they used to be, and he can probably never be a brain surgeon again. So he finds out about a man who was a paraplegic who went to Nepal, and he learned something there that allowed him to walk again. And Doctor Strange decides to go there so he can learn to fix his hands. And it's kind of that's kind of like one of the lame modern tropes where like Western medicine sucks, science sucks. What really matters is vague Eastern spirituality. Um, Largely advocated by people who don't know anything about these religions. They don't know anything about Hinduism. They don't know anything about Buddhism. You bring up the Pali Canon, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. You bring up the Trimarti. You bring up the Vedas. These people like will claim to be part of these religions, but they know nothing about them. I probably know far more about these religions, their worldview, their ethics, etc., than people who pretend to follow them. And I don't mean people in these countries, I mean like Westerners who do it. So, because Western science sucks, and because in a universe where divine beings interact directly, for whatever reason, God has decided he's not going to interact directly, the only thing he can go to is he can go talk to some Randys in the Himalayas. So he goes there, and they're initially like, "No, we aren't going to let you in because you're arrogant. You're arrogant like this other guy." So it turns out that I forget what his name is. What's his name? Mads Milkinson. I'm just going to call him Le Chiffre because that's his character in Casino Royale, and that's the role I know him from. Or Hannibal. I'll just call him Hannibal. So Hannibal apparently has made contact with an interdimensional being named Mordo. Um, okay. Um, so one second, is his name Mordo? Sorry. So Hannibal worships a being named I can't pronounce his name, so I'm just gonna call him Ahriman because that's who it is. So he worships a being called Ahriman who rules an alternate universe called the Dark World. You know, kind of like the Dark World from Thor, the Dark World, except not really. And in the Dark World, there's no time, there's no fate, and there's no death. Everything in there is immortal. It doesn't die, and things don't age. So it turns out that the entire motivation of Hannibal is that he wants to be freed from death, and he wants the world to be brought into the Dark Realm, where Ahriman will grant them all freedom from death. So he steals some ritual from the Ancient One, who's some random woman, some random bald woman who trains Doctor Strange, and he steals the ritual so he can begin the thing that'll let him open the door to the dark realm, or I don't fucking know. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but we got a lot of cool scenes of Doctor Strange learning to use his powers. We got this alternate dimension called the Mirror Realm, which takes you into the Inception. There's lots of kind of cool magic scenes. Doctor Strange, like every superhero, has a ton of special abilities that he has. I guess he studies a bit, but largely they just kind of come to him. He has the overpowered ability to control time, and that basically just evaporates tension later in the movie. So, so there's the guy Hannibal tries to like open the dark realm, and Ahriman comes in and eats everything, and the Ancient One who's like training him dies because she had a vision and she found out it's her time, but the Ancient One had actually been delaying her death by taking power from Ahriman to make herself live longer. Apparently, in this universe, there's no form of magic other than like making a deal with Satan that allow you to live longer. So ultimately, if we can get away from just the bullshit that was the film's plot, the underlying premise is death, which is kind of weird because it doesn't really have anything to do with Doctor Strange's own personal arc. But Hannibal is unwilling to accept death. He's unwilling to accept that the fate of everything is to die. And the Ancient One is willing to accept that. And that's kind of the difference in their philosophy. The interesting thing is in a movie that's full of so much like pseudo spirituality and pseudoscience and all that stuff, the concept of an afterlife is never mentioned. It's not about, because in Eastern religions it's about accepting that death is not the end, and it's the same thing in Christianity. You're supposed to not fear death and not cling to life at the expense of your soul because you have a soul. There's a part of you that's immortal, and to corrupt that is in Dune. That was the ultimate commandment of the Orange Catholic Bible: "Thou shalt not disfigure the human soul." And the idea in Buddhism, Hinduism, and Christianity, and most religions, is to maintain the soul for a future afterlife. But in this movie, despite the fact that there's like multiple dimensions and stuff, the concept of an afterlife is never mentioned. It just seems that death is permanent, which is really weird, given everything else that we see in this plot line. But no, apparently death is annihilationism in Tibet. Apparently, Buddhists in this universe don't believe in reincarnation, which is really weird. But this is made by like people who don't understand anything about the topics they're making movies on. So, so Hannibal tries to bring the world into Ahriman's world so they'll be immortal. But Doctor Strange goes into Ahriman's world with like his time magic, and Ahriman just keeps killing him over and over again in a time loop. And Doctor Strange says, "I'll stop the time loop if you agree to leave Earth." So he leaves Earth. Um, so then the Hindu sorcerer who trained him is like, "This was wrong. You broke the natural law. I'm leaving to get some fried chicken or some shit like that." So he leaves because Doctor Strange saved the world by bending the laws of nature. And then the film ends with like Thor showing up and Doctor Strange being like, "Hello, Thor, you're making a cameo in this shitty after credits scene." So yeah, you see what I mean about this being a hard movie to review? I don't even really know what to say. It's just very vapid. I mean, there's impressive visuals. The dialogue's pretty good. Doctor Strange is an interesting character. But there's no depth to it. There's no depth to Doctor Strange. He's just an asshole who becomes like the hero because he's the main character. The Ancient One's just some random bald girl, bald woman. There's like this like diverse cast of like a bunch of like mystery meat people and like just randies from all across the world who have all become sorcerers to defend the earth from mystical threats, like how the Avengers defend Earth from physical threats, except for Loki, who's like a god, and except for um, the like all the other threats that they fight that are mystical, whatever. They're like the other version of the Avengers or some bullshit like that. So Doctor Strange becomes the new Sorcerer Supreme, and he's going to defend Earth. So, like, what did we learn from this movie? We learned that if you're an asshole and you get damaged, you can go to Nepal and learn how to use magic. And it makes you strong, but you're still an asshole. We learned that apparently you only can have an afterlife if you worship Satan and you go to hell. Otherwise, you're just fucked. We learned that Hannibal Lecter was eating people so that he could gain magical powers. And we learned that Inception was actually like part of the Marvel universe and it took place in Doctor Strange. Um, Sorry guys, I guess this review is like as shallow as the movie. It's really hard to do a review when the film gives you nothing to work with. I mean, I guess I could launch into one of my like infamous rants about like something completely unrelated to the film, but it's hard. This movie gives me nothing to work with. So if you want some like popcorn entertainment, go see it. But it's just the most lowest basic bitch, um, dumb Western attempt to understand religions. That I mean, like Swipple attempt to understand religions. They have no idea like what they even are. So I hope this review wasn't too painful to sit through, and I'll talk to you guys later.